Tuesday mornings, bright and early, we love visiting with Ron, the car guy from Westside Auto Pros, because he always teaches us something. And this morning, hopefully, you're going to educate people about what in the world's going on with this whole emissions deal.
Are you going to talk about urea today? Inside car joke.
Diesel exhaust fluid. No, we're not going to talk about that today, but what I am going to try to do, because some people have asked me, is it's been in the news a lot over the last few weeks, is the Volkswagen emissions scandal. And I don't have a hotline to the Volkswagen Corporation in Germany to call and get the full.
Even if you did, you don't speak German.
Exactly, so, yeah. Exactly. I was going there next.
You called them and you said, hey, can you make any comment? And they said, 9!
9. Yeah, you're going to make 9 comments? I wanted 10. But no, nevertheless, it's the same information that's out there, through CNN to everybody. But I just want to maybe put it a little bit more into layman's terms or regular terms as to what's going on and what's happened. And first off, I mean, this affects only their diesel-powered vehicles.
Okay, so right now, let's eliminate the majority of the vehicles they produce.
Correct. Okay. Currently, it's only focused on the diesel vehicles, and we've all seen it evolve, over the years. I remember when I was a kid, you'd follow a semi-truck down the interstate, and I mean, there'd be black smoke just bellowing out of there and stuff like that. And the federal government tightened up the emissions standard on it, not only in the United States, but in Europe. I mean, worldwide, there's emission standards for diesel vehicles, and so vehicles don't do that anymore. And they've had to become more efficient in the emissions department, to where they didn't bellow out the black smoke and all the other nasty stuff that came from the emissions. And they've done it in a variety of ways, but it's come at an expense. I mean, vehicles have diesel particulate filters, which are huge filters that filter the exhaust. And they're self-cleaning to some point, but on some vehicles, we replaced one on a Mercedes the other day. It was almost $7,000.
Oh, wow!
For the part. So it's come at a huge expense for these vehicles, and companies have struggled with meeting the emission standards. And of course, the reason people buy diesel vehicles, and you can probably attest to this, you get 30% or better fuel mileage out of them. I mean, and they're reliable. I mean, at least certainly during the majority of their initial life. I mean, they require very little in the way of maintenance and repairs and stuff like that. And then from a towing standpoint, if you're looking at like a pickup truck or something, you can't beat the torque. So there's a lot of good reasons to buy
I drove
diesels.
a Volkswagen diesel a few years ago. It was a great car.
I've said it on the show before that TDI diesel that Volkswagen uses in the VWs and Audis. I thought, and still do think, it's one of the best diesel powered vehicles out there. I mean, they're quiet. They don't smoke. They run phenomenal. I mean, they work really well. But therein came the problem.
I was going to say, so where'd they go wrong?
Whenever manufacturers design and build a vehicle, I mean, they have to go through testing, emissions testing. If it's sold in the U.S., they go through EPA testing. If it's sold in Europe, they go through European emissions testing. And what Volkswagen did, and they've admitted to this, or at least according to the news stories, is they came up with basically a defeat device. And what reports have shown is they've built into the software the ability for the computer to detect that it was being tested for emissions, because there's certain steps that it goes through, certain engine speeds and different stuff like that when they're actually testing the emissions out of the tailpipe. And so their computer was able to detect that it was being tested for emissions, and it would switch to a different mode in the software.
So okay, now we have to make it legal.
Exactly. It would switch to a different mode in the software.
But just on the vehicle that was being tested.
Correct. At the time it was being tested. Yeah. It would clean up, and the emissions would be good, and it would pass. And then it would go back out onto the road, and it would go back to the main default program where the vehicle emissions were reported somewhere between 10 and 40% higher.
It's like my kids, when I'm in the room, they behave, and as soon as I leave the room, they start pounding on each other, and there's crying, and you know, when I'm there, they're good.
Exactly. Did you get your kids from Volkswagen?
I may have.
Okay.
I might have checked, yeah.
Now, one of the ways it was explained is if you were getting your vehicle tested and they plugged the machine in to check your vehicle, when they plugged that machine in, the computer would switch over, everything was fine. But as soon as you unplug that machine, it'd say, okay, we're not being tested anymore, let's go back to normal. Boom, it'd go back to normal.
And it's just simply because they didn't think they could pass any of the tests.
The vehicles wouldn't pass.
They wouldn't test, not think, they
So
wouldn't.
why wouldn't they make them so they could pass?
Well, and that's, I guess, the million-dollar question. But you know, it's reported that, and it's been proven by other manufacturers that in not passing the emissions, they can get better fuel mileage out of the vehicles, and they can give them better performance. So now comes the fix to all this.
Right.
You know, what are they going to do to fix it? And currently, the understanding is that they're working on new software for the computers. I mean, they don't have to replace engines and stuff like that. They can fix it through computer
Just reprogram
software.
it.
Exactly, because they can make it pass through computer software programming. Wow. But the unknown is, what's it going to do as far as affecting how the vehicles drive and operate, and the fuel mileage and
Why
stuff.
would you go have that done? You know?
From here on out, we're going to follow the rules.
I'm not taking mine in for the new software upgrade.
No, it's fine.
And so, you know, it brings about a lot of, you know, questions, or at least to those of us. I can't talk this morning. Those of us in the auto industry. Is anyone else doing this?
I was just going to ask that question.
They just the ones that got caught.
If everything is a big computer right now, why aren't other companies
And
doing that?
cars have, I mean, you know, cars have 15, 20, 30 computers on them that all talk with each other. And I mean, if, you know, we don't know. I mean, you just have to assume everybody's playing by the rules.
No,
But
see, you're talking car people, and you have to remember, you're not cheating unless you're caught.
just like at the speedway.
You're not cheating unless you're
And
caught.
this wasn't like a giant government lab that caught this. It was like a West Side Auto Pros, wasn't
Well,
it?
it was. Well, I think it was a little bigger than West Side Auto Pros, but yeah, it was an independent group, and they were under contract, according to my understanding, to kind of spot check some of this stuff, and it wasn't the whistle, so to speak, wasn't blown, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean this was discovered some time ago, like maybe a year or so ago, and then a bigger investigation was
investigating.
Yeah. And then we boil down to, you know, what's the cost of all this. And according to some of the news reports, you know, Volkswagen has set aside $7.3 billion.
Billion with a B?
With a B, $1 billion to correct this issue, you know, under recalls and stuff like that. And not included in that is the U.S. Could fine them up to $18 billion. For violating and causing this problem. But one thing people don't realize is Volkswagen as a whole, I mean as a car company, which is going to include, you know, Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, you know, all their flagship brands. Volkswagen's the largest auto manufacturer in the world.
Oh.
We don't see it here because they you know, don't sell as many cars in the U.S., but you go over to like Western Europe, and 1 out of every 4 vehicles sold comes from the Volkswagen family.
Wow.
So like GM is over here?
Exactly. So I mean, they've certainly been growing in the U.S., and I think they make some great cars, and the, you know, I'm still in love with that diesel they have in their vehicles, and it really, as a car owner, you know, if you own one of those vehicles, currently it has no impact, you know, on you. I mean, you still have the same car. It's not a safety issue. It's still driving and going down the road the same. At some point, they're going to want to correct, you know, the emissions aspect on
By
it.
that time, it's time to get a new car.
Well, and we don't know. I mean, maybe they'll work hard and come up with some kind of a software engineering program that doesn't affect, you know, you as the consumer and how the car operates and drives. But, you know, like you had said, Jackie, you know, why did you find the workaround in the first place?
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see it unfold. But the end user that's driving the car right now, it has no impact on them other than the manufacturer's going to need to step up and take care of things.
I read yesterday that they're trying to blame it on the CEO and one engineer.
Yeah, like
as
two
if
people total.
As if two people
Two
could have
guys.
done all that.
All right, now, if you
I
have-
was thinking about that on the way over here. As an engineer, all of a sudden you come up with it and you don't get approval.
All right, if you have any other questions, car related, get a hold of Ron. There's his phone number, or
You can go to AskRonTheCarGuy.com. I'll answer any questions you have.